My future daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and said, "The best gift tomorrow is if you disappear." I felt the sting, but years of raising a son taught me to breathe. First speak, last. So I set down a single envelope proof of the deed and everything I'd quietly paid and walked out with my keys and my dignity. That was only the opening move. By morning, paper would speak louder than any toast. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I trimmed the stems the way Travis taught me on a slant so the roses could drink without drowning. The kitchen island shone under the pendants, a tidy stage for white lilies and eucalyptus. Behind Kirill, the wedding dress hovered on its hanger, bright as a warning flag. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "The best gift tomorrow is if you disappear from our family," she said. Lyle adjusted a stack of takeout menus. He didn't meet my eyes. The refrigerator hummed. I set one lily aside and let the air move in and out slow. I've learned that silence remembers better than anger. So I remembered the angle of her chin, the way her smile didn't travel to her eyes, the dress catching the light like new snow. On the counter by the sink lay a towel embroidered with the house monogram, and beneath it a smaller towel set aside for guests. The little tag said, "Dorothy," not my name. Place cards were stacked nearby, Lyle and Carol Vale family college friends. I searched for Mom without using my hands. I found none. Carol stepped sideways and blocked the refrigerator door with the kind of grace that says, "You're in the way." When a house forgets your name, it labels you guest. The thought arrived as gently as a door clicking shut. I smoothed the ribbon around the bouquet. Carol leaned in as if to smell it. "Didn't we say a tighter wrap? These look a little loose," she said, syrup over vinegar. "They'll open by morning," I said. "Flowers do that when you let them breathe." She sighed. "We're still waiting on the ice swans," I added, because practical questions are safer than emotional ones. "The swans are for photos," she said, "not opinions." I nodded as if logging inventory. Restraint is not weakness, it's bookkeeping. I entered one more line in a ledger only I could see. Lyle slid an envelope across the island palm-up muscle memory from long years of me making things right. "Mom will sign," he said. I uncapped my blue pen and laid it beside the paper. Then I rotated the invoice back toward him so the vendor's logo faced his chest. "Wrong payee," I said. "Nothing else." His hand hovered, then retreated. Carol's smile lifted at the edges and froze there, a frost line. They leaned together over the tablet as if the glow belonged to them alone. "We decided to push the first dance," Carol said to Lyle. "Our vendor prefers earlier delivery," Lyle answered. Our. The pronouns had a fenced yard and my name wasn't on the gate. I could have asked for a chair, a glass of water, a sliver of the conversation. Instead, I took measurements with my eyes. In my head, I totaled line items the way I once totaled grocery lists: down payment $87,000, patchwork months of utilities, a new starter for Lyle's car, boxes of groceries when eggs felt like a luxury. If respect isn't on the receipt, stop paying. The sentence filed itself without my help. "I'll finish these and get out of your way," I said. No one objected. I tied the last length of floral tape, pressed the stems into the vase until they nested like a quiet choir, and washed my hands. The guest towel felt new, scratchy with starch. I dried each finger carefully and put the towel back exactly where I found it. The granite I chose held a soft constellation of mica. The custom pulls I ordered were cool under my skin. Money leaves fingerprints even when people pretend it doesn't. Down the hall, the guest room waited with its neutral art and two pillows that never seemed to hold my shape. The suitcase was already under the bed, half packed since lunchtime, tucked in like a secret. A guest leaves without a scene. I learned that from funerals and from hotels, both places where love has rules. I returned to the doorway of the kitchen and waited for Lyle to look up. When he did, I gave him the smallest possible kindness, the benefit of adulthood. "Handle the invoice," I said. "You're ready." To Carol, I kept my voice steady, a line drawn with a ruler. "I'll be out of your way tonight." She tilted her head. "That's probably for the best. They mistook calm for retreat. That is the favorite mistake of people who win by noise." I slipped the blue pen into my purse, then opened my wallet and touched the photo of Travis beside the first house we fixed. Silence first. Paper next. I didn't ask where I was sleeping. I didn't ask where I belonged. I set the vase in the center of the island and stepped back. The lilies breathed. I did too. In the foyer, the guest key hung from a hook shaped like a tiny anchor. I lifted it down and closed my hand. I looked once at the staircase where Lyle had tumbled at age 7 and cried into my shoulder. Somewhere above that landing, my boy grew a man who can choose. I can choose too. By the time they noticed the quiet, I had already slid the key into my purse. The sky over the cul-de-sac carried the pink of a coastal evening. I didn't slam the door. I let it seal itself with that little rubber whisper new houses have. At the car, I sat for a moment with my hands on the wheel and counted to 10. Then I started the engine. There is a rhythm to leaving that your body remembers even when your heart wants to stay. I listened to it. I drove past the country club gates where the reception would not be free and the fountain where the ice swans would pose. At a stoplight, a couple crossed in formal wear, rehearsing a spin in the crosswalk. The light turned green. I let them finish anyway. At the next light, I turned my phone face down in the cup holder and watched my reflection in the dark screen. At the apartment, I was not yet calling home. I set my purse on the small table by the door and took out the anchor key. It lay on my palm, ordinary as a nickel. I folded my fingers around it and felt the edges print my skin. The plan did not need an announcement. It needed a beginning. At the front desk, I slid the key across, took back my car keys, and turned my phone face down. The clerk wore a name tag that said Emily in cheerful block letters. She checked a clipboard and, without meaning harm, looked for me on the visitor log instead of the homeowner list. I spared her the correction. "I won't be needing access tonight," I said. "Of course." She placed the key on a small lacquered tray meant for deliveries and spare fobs. Metal touched wood with a soft tick, neat and final. When she returned my car keys, the weight in my palm was ordinary and liberating, the shape I've known since I learned to leave without asking permission. Outside, the air had that late summer brine, Virginia Beach, saves for evenings. Sprinklers clicked somewhere. A neighbor's porch light draped the driveway in amber. I sat in the driver's seat, buckled in, and let the wheel meet my hands the way a good handshake meets your grip. There were a dozen speeches I could have given, words that would hang in their kitchen like smoke. I chose oxygen instead. I exhaled. I drove. The Hampton Inn smelled like lemon cleaner and the faint iron of the ice machine. A father and teen son argued amiably about which snack to buy from the market pantry. The clerk behind the counter had a bun so tight it looked like a decision. "One night, Arliss Keaton," I said, sliding my card across. She typed with a rhythm that said she'd done this 1,000 times. The receipt spit out warm. My name was spelled correctly, the room number penciled in a tidy hand. In the elevator, my reflection met me at half strength in the brushed metal. I lifted my chin and saw a woman who'd stopped bending for the sake of being included. In the room, I set the thermostat to 72 and heard the unit answer with a sensible hum. The suitcase went against the wall, not the chair my mother taught me that chairs are for people. Toiletries lined up like soldiers on the vanity. I never travel without travel-sized order. On the desk, I placed my blue pen and opened a blank notes page on the hotel notepad app, What I Will No Longer Fund. The title looked back at me with a steadiness I wanted to feel in my bones. The phone buzzed against the desk face down. Habit made me flip it to see the icon. Habit is a teacher. Tonight, I graduated. Still, I pressed the voicemail and held the speaker a few inches away. "Mom, it's me." Lyle's voice rushed in, soft around the edges, trying to be both son and manager. "We're all stressed. Can you just stay? We'll talk tomorrow. Please, don't make this bigger than it is." A clink in the background, then a breath. "I love you." I listened to the ceiling for a full minute after it ended. Then I wrote my first line beneath the title, "Talking Isn't Proof." I put a period on it. I didn't call back. The second message landed like a door latch catching hard. Carol didn't bother with hello. "This is petty and cruel on my weekend." She said, each word dressed for court. "Grow up. Your son shouldn't have to manage you and our vendors. If you wanted attention, congratulations." I turned on Do Not Disturb and set the phone face down beside the blue pen as if I were placing two halves of a compass that finally agreed on north. The room settled around that choice. The AC breathed. I did too. The third message broke through as a transcript banner across the top of the dark screen, the way some storms announce themselves with pressure before rain. Lyle again, but not. "We're worried," he said, slower coached. "Kirill thinks maybe you're confused, or it's a lot. Maybe someone should check on you. We just want to make sure you're okay." I felt the line pass through me cold and practiced the concern that isn't concern at all. On the pad, I wrote a second sentence under the first. "If they question my mind, I'll answer with paper." I underlined paper once. Then I slid both notes between the cover and the first page, like a promise hidden in plain sight. I opened my laptop and outlined the next 12 hours the way you outline a recipe you can make in the dark. One email, Marcia at dawn. Deed copy mortgage page. With co-borrower any correspondence Carol failed to return. 2 review wedding contracts for the signatures I knew were mine. 3 pack the notice envelope and decide when to present it so the echo would do part of my work. I printed the hotel's complimentary envelope with block letters, "Notice hold." I slid a stiff sheet of stationery inside, blank, for now full of intent. Room service arrived with a knock that sounded like courtesy. I chose a turkey sandwich, no mayonnaise hot tea with honey. The tray gave me more space than I needed a small square of stage. I ate slowly the way you do when it's the first real meal you've had to yourself all day. Between bites, I practiced 2 sentences aloud in a voice just above a whisper because tone keeps company with words. That invoice is yours. Again, I'll be out of your way. Neither sentence trembled. The AC answered with a steady breath, a metronome for restraint. I cleaned the cup, put the tray in the hall, and checked the lock twice. In the wallet behind my driver's license, Travis held a coil of rope in the photo from the first house he and I ever demoed. I slid the photo face up, not for comfort, but for witness. He had a way of raising an eyebrow that felt like both question and blessing. "You're watching?" I asked the empty room. The quiet did not disagree. On the desk, the blue pen lay across the notepad like a baton between movements. I ran a thumb along its clip and thought about the difference between leaving and withdrawing. Tonight I had left like a guest because the rules in their house called me one. Tomorrow I would withdraw like an owner because the papers in my files call me that too. I brushed my teeth, folded my clothes over the luggage stand, and turned out the lamps until the room became shapes and memory. The phone stayed on Do Not Disturb a small moon face down. In the distance, a siren rose and fell the way ocean birds call when they can't decide which way the wind favors. Somewhere, a couple laughed as if the night existed for them alone. Good. Let it. I was done auditioning for inclusion. I lay on the bed and let my breath count itself in 4s. 4 in hold, 4 out hold. The technique works for grief and for hotel pillows. The lists I'd made stacked neatly in my mind, each item a quiet hinge leading to the next. There is a dignity in sequence when chaos wants to be king. Before sleep took me, I spoke the closing sentence to the dark, not as a threat, but but as a map. Tonight I left like a guest. Tomorrow I act like an owner. Then I let the room keep watch and the plan keep time. At 6:10 a.m., I flicked the phone off Do Not Disturb, and the subject line waited for me like a porch light left on deed and co-borrower confirmation. I opened the email and let the attachments load one by one the way you watch tidewater fill a hollowed rock. There was the deed, my name cleanly typed beside Lyle's. There was the mortgage line, co-borrower, not in dispute, not shaded by anyone's attitude. There was the down payment memo with the timestamp that had once felt like a gift and now read like a ledger. Paper doesn't shout. It simply holds. I saved each file twice and forwarded them to myself again because at 68 I've learned that the world respects the duplicate more than the plea. I called Marcia from the desk chair, feet planted, a coffee stirring itself to cool beside me. She answered on the second ring, fully awake because she is a woman who lives on preparedness. We didn't talk about feelings. We talked about standing. "Your position is strong," she said. And then she translated that into stairs. I could climb, file the notice of intent to sell if necessary, offer right of first refusal, document everything. We calibrated language. I read back her phrasing deliberately. Effective, immediately I'm withdrawing voluntary financial support. She hummed approval. And the house, I asked. Treat it like the asset it is, she said. No threats, only procedures. I wrote that at the top of my pad. Procedures are calm. Procedures are fair. Procedures are the opposite of begging to be seen. Before the day could sprint away from me, I went downstairs to the Hampton Inn's business center. The printer woke up groaning, then gave me the deed pages, warm and smelling faintly of toner. I stapled them in neat corners, slid them into a manila folder, and printed the mortgage page and the memo too. On the tab I wrote in block letters, House 35%. My blue pen clipped to the folder's edge was not for signing, not anymore. It was for underlining. I slid everything into my tote and felt the peculiar steadiness that comes when grief finally turns into work. I sat on the bed with the phone and the country club contract. The main number routed me to catering, where a woman with a steady voice introduced herself and asked how she could help. I identified myself by the name on their account. There was a pause. I could hear her keyboard pick up speed. Yes, Mrs. Keaton, we have you as the contracting party. I asked to cancel the reception under the clause listed in the second page footer. I acknowledged their cancellation fees before she did. Please send an itemized statement to my email, I said, and spelled it out to avoid any chance of misdelivery. She hesitated long enough to feel like a question. Then she exhaled into professionalism. Your signature is on file. I can process this now. In the quiet that followed, I heard the hum of a kitchen somewhere and pictured pans already lined like soldiers. The guilt rose and fell like a small wave that never reached the shore. Proceed, I said. The best wedding gift was my disappearance. They had named it. I was finally wrapping it. She listed the costs in a tone that apologized for none of them. Kitchen prep hours, band retainer florals, already conditioned staff, scheduled with weekend rates. Charge them to the card on file, I said. She repeated the last phrase back to me as proof. I thought of Lyle's hand sliding an invoice at me the night before. Boundaries are expensive, cheaper than disrespect. While she finished the cancellation code, I wrote down the confirmation number and the time, and I didn't explain myself to a stranger who didn't ask. Within minutes, the email arrived. Cancellation confirmed. I replied and requested a receipt and a signed acknowledgement. Then I BCC'd Marcia with a short note that didn't wander. As discussed, contract holder executed cancellation. See attached. I added the deed excerpt for context, careful not to throw any dramatic adjectives in with the PDFs. Order not theater. I watched my own words sit there small and exact and felt power that wasn't loud, just accurate. There was a kind of mercy in speaking clearly once. Back in the room, I laid out my materials the way a sensible person sets a table. Into a clean envelope went a copy of the contract, the cancellation email, my request for acknowledgement, the confirmation code. On the front, I printed "Notice hold for front desk" and underlined it once. The manila folder went behind it in my tote. The blue pen I put in my purse, a reminder not to be anyone's signature today. I zipped the tote and let the teeth meet with a sound that felt like closure. Before lunch, I drove the long way to the club, past the street that holds the house my money helped buy. Their blinds were open wide as if light could be proof. A white ribbon flapped on the porch rail. I didn't slow, not even to check if my favorite hydrangea survived the heat. The wheel stayed straight. Old rolls are the easiest detours. I kept to the road. The club called me back as I parked in a visitor spot beneath crepe myrtles that had shaken most of their blossoms. The catering manager confirmed staff notifications, vendor stand-downs, and a revised floor plan that would be empty by default. "Would you like to leave a message for the couple?" she asked, a polite opening, the sort that invites reconciliation for the record. "No," I said kindly. "My message is the receipt." I thanked her for being thorough and watched a man in a blazer cross the lobby with a clipboard, looking like a small ship righting itself after a wave. Inside, I set the envelope on the front counter, where incoming pieces are sorted, not hidden, not tucked behind a register. The manager glanced at the header before she looked up at me, eyes flicking between my face and the name on the document. She nodded. "We'll keep this with the event file." I smiled the way you do at a competent barista, gratitude without intimacy, and left. Outside, I lifted my face briefly to the heat. I wanted to run, but walking was the better sermon. By noon, the hotel room had become an office again. I filed the printed confirmations behind house 35%, left the tab edges perfectly aligned like a mouth closed on argument, and slid the folder into the tote. I checked the mirror and saw a woman who looked rested, not because she slept, but because she had finally stopped explaining. I sent one last email to myself and to Marcia, everything in one thread subject line, consistent attachments properly named. Today, my voice is a paper trail. The phone buzzed once on the desk and I let it. I had already given the day its shape, and nothing on that screen could change the geometry. I put the tote by the door, my purse on the chair, and my hand on the room key. The envelope at the club would sit there quietly, doing work I used to do with soup and extra chairs. The folder in my bag would keep being true whether anyone liked it or not. Tomorrow had its own teeth. I had my pen. I stepped through the country club's glass doors and into a hush that smells faintly of lemon polish. Wood paneling glows under soft sconces, and the carpet drinks the sound of my shoes. My purse presses against my hip, a quiet reminder of the manila envelope inside its label, written in the calm hand of someone who knows paper will always speak more cleanly than voice. Paper first, voice last. At the marble counter, I square the envelope beside the desk bell, aligning it as if a straight edge could keep the day from bending. For your catering manager, I say, my tone steady, time sensitive. I am the contracting party. The young attendant notes my name, eyes flicking toward the header visible through the translucent flap. Her mouth opens as if to ask a question, then shuts with a small click. The envelope remains where I placed it, a silent witness. She reaches under the counter and produces a teal wristband. Vendors this way, she offers, automatically sliding it forward with a practiced smile. I let it hover between us, then set it back on the marble flat. I'm not staff today. The pause that follows is longer than manners require, a pocket of air where hierarchy tries to remember me. The catering manager appears with a tablet in hand, her professional nod acknowledging both the contract number and the inevitability of my presence. "We've processed the cancellation per your email," she confirms. I request a printed acknowledgement and an itemized receipt sent to my inbox. She taps the screen, nods again. Efficiency without small talk. It suits us both. Beside the entrance, a foam board leans against an easel, the seating chart for tomorrow's reception. I drift toward it, drawn by habit, if not hope. Names scroll in tidy rows. Friends of the bride, business partners of the groom, extended relatives I've never met. My name isn't there, no mom, no Arliss. Just a blank space where family should belong. A missing name is a loud decision. A couple approaches, glancing from the board to me. The woman laughs lightly, not cruel, but careless. "So you're not family?" she asks, tilting her head. I meet her eyes and answer without heat. "I paid for the room." The words land heavier than any argument. Silence folds over the three of us until they step aside, murmuring. The manager offers a polite escape route. "Would you like to exit through a side corridor to avoid confusion?" I shake my head. Confusion clears when receipts arrive. Her expression remains courteous, but she retreats a respectful distance as if my quiet boundary draws an invisible line. The attendant still holds the teal wristband. I slide it gently back across the counter. "Keep this for someone who needs access." The gesture is small, almost casual, but it carries more weight than a speech. Power does not need volume. I confirm they have my card on file for all fees and ask for a stamped "received" on a copy of my notice. The manager obliges the rubber stamp, clicking down with finality. I snap a phone photo of the mark and BCC Marcia, my attorney, from the lobby chair. The email subject is plain "Acknowledgement Reception Cancellation." Passing the phone board once more, I feel a lightness that isn't absence, but release. Respect doesn't live on a chart, and I've stopped auditioning for a seat. The envelope remains on the counter, quiet and immovable, speaking louder than any confrontation. By evening, the word "Unfounded" will sit in a plastic sleeve, my quiet shield for what comes next. Sunday's late afternoon light fell across my hotel room in soft, slanted stripes when the phone rang. Mrs. Keaton, Detective Ramsey with Virginia Beach Police. We received a call expressing concern about possible confusion and financial exploitation. "Are you available to talk?" A pause held between us. "I am," I answered evenly. "First thing tomorrow morning. I'll bring documentation. Please note my location and confirm an appointment." As I ended the call, one thought surfaced, clear and cool. If they question my mind, I'll answer with paper. I opened the folder marked "House 35% and began a quiet harvest of proof. 3 years of bank statements, transfer receipts, wedding invoices, and the original down payment memo, all sorted into tidy stacks. Each set wore a sticky label in my block, lettering "Mortgage Help, Utilities, Car Repairs, Wedding." My blue pen underlined totals, not emotions. Before bed, I wrote a 1-page summary of dates and amounts. No adjectives, no flourishes, only verbs and numbers that could stand alone. The alarm was set for 7:00 a.m. I slept without dreams. Morning brought a sky as sharp as fresh linen. At the precinct, a front desk officer slid a clipboard across the counter. I returned it with my ID and the concise summary. Detective Ramsey met me in a quiet interview room where the wall clock ticked without hurry. He began with standard questions, cognitive checks, financial habits, consent for large transfers. I answered directly, then set each packet on the table by category. He studied the neat columns, tracing patterns of consistent giving and deliberate signatures. I pointed to the deed excerpt and the co-borrower line, clarifying that the reception cancellation was within my signed contract rights. Ramsey stepped out to verify the contract numbers and the deed email headers. When he returned, respect edged his tone. "Everything checks out," he said. "Would you mind leaving duplicates for the record?" I handed him the prepared copies without a word. Finally, he printed a single page and slid it toward me. "Disposition Unfounded. This appears to be a retaliatory report," he explained. "No evidence of diminished capacity or exploitation." He signed and dated it, adding almost gently, "Keep this with you. It settles any future calls." In the lobby, I slid the paper into a clear plastic sleeve and placed it atop my House 35% folder. The sleeve caught the morning light like a quiet shield. A shield doesn't need to be heavy to be effective, I thought. I thanked Detective Ramsey for his thoroughness. He nodded once. If they call again, bring this first. Outside, the late morning air carried the clean scent of the ocean. I walked to my car, balanced not triumphant, the plastic sleeve a calm weight in my bag. In the parking lot, I sent a single text meeting attorney at 2 p.m. The calendar ping confirmed the time. Today, the rumor died on paper. The conference room door latched with a soft click as I set the clear sleeve marked Unfounded at the top of my stack. Marcia took the head seat, her posture crisp. Across the polished table, Lyle and Carol sat shoulder to shoulder, the calculator poised between us like a silent metronome. Rule of the room, facts only. Marcia slid a single sheet toward us. We're here to resolve ownership and obligations, nothing else. Her tone was steady, professional. No character debates. A small timer app blinked on her phone, counting down 90 minutes. I reached into my folder and passed a single page across the table. Income, mortgage, utilities, auto loans, and dining averages, all in neat rows, every number sourced and dated. No adjectives, just math. Lyle scanned it. Carol looked once and then away. Carol broke the quiet. Those dinners out were just for now, she said, voice edged with a smile meant to soften the deficit. Marcia didn't look up. Spending is a choice. Debt is math. I underlined one simple line with my blue pen. Total outflow exceeds total income. Marcia flipped her legal pad to a fresh page and drew 2 rectangles. Here are your options, she wrote as she spoke. 1, buy out Ms. Keaton's 35% at fair market value. 2, list the property and split the proceeds by deed percentage. No third door. Dates appeared beneath each option like quiet deadlines. The calculator became a judge. Marcia entered the figure's market value, $300,000 minus fees. My share, about $95,000 net. Side by side, buyout math and sale math glowed on the small screen. Lyle's throat worked as he swallowed. Silence added weight to the numbers. If the buyout is chosen, Marcia continued proof of funds and appraisal within 30 days, closing within 60. If those terms aren't met, the house goes to market automatically. I added, calm and clear, no private loans from me. Ever again. Carol's jaw tightened, but she noted the words without reply. I slid the 1-page snapshot beside the buyout math. What you can afford is what the paper says, I said quietly, not what a weekend wants. Lyle nodded once the first real sign of calculation behind his eyes. I kept my voice measured. I won't fund lifestyle. I will accept what I'm owed. We can be family without accounts mixing. Marcia repeated the sentences into her recorder to draft the agreement exactly. At last, Marcia placed 2 signature tabs on the table, one under each option, but left the pens capped. No signatures today, she said. Positions only. I gathered my sleeve and the blue pen steady in my grasp. If love is currency, we spent ours wrong. Today we switched to receipts. Yellow signature tabs lined the table like small warning flags. My clear sleeve stamped Unfounded rested on top of my folder, a silent witness to everything we'd already survived. Marcia's voice stayed, even her pen resting like a metronome between us. Today we trade speeches for signatures. Marcia read each clause with deliberate care job. Within 60 days, 1 car sold within 30 monthly proof of income and debt. No new credit lines. Breach meant immediate market sale of the house, and my 35% returned in cash. I asked for 1 addition. No private loans from me directly or through anyone else. She nodded, wrote it in. Lyle's hand trembled at the first yellow tab. Initial here, Marcia said. He swallowed and marked his name. Carol's breath caught, but she followed. I steadied the page with 2 fingers, offering no smile, only procedural mercy. The 1-page household snapshot from yesterday lay beside the agreement. Numbers will carry the mood, I said, and meant it. Carol's eyes drifted to the column where outflow topped income. She said nothing. We detailed the car clause. VIN title transfer proceeds applied to revolving debt. Carol blinked hard. I slid a box of tissues across the table without a word. Marcia outlined the monthly proof cadence by the 5th of each month and email packet statements, pay stubs, credit reports with her CCD. Miss one deadline, the sale option triggered. For the first time, Lyle looked me in the eye and nodded. The last tab clicked down. Marcia countersigned as escrow agent. Boundaries or love with receipts, I thought, sliding my blue pen back into my bag. By noon, I was in my hotel room, laptop open. I drafted a precise request to the fundraising platform, subject request to suspend and remove house fund campaign. I attached screenshots I'd quietly saved from the wedding website's QR page over the weekend, plus contract scans. Compliance replied within the hour, campaign closed, disbursements halted, page archived. I forwarded the confirmation to Marcia and BCC'd myself. In my folder, a new tab appeared. Image channels resolved. I capped my pen not for signing now, but for pointing when needed. Today, their promises got dates. The front desk clerk handed me a cream envelope. My name written in looping ink I recognized instantly. Lorena's handwriting carried the slight, rightward slant of someone who always finishes what she starts. I sat by the lobby window before opening it. Sometimes the quietest mail redraws a family map. Inside her card was steady and spare. In neat script, she explained that she would not fund a buyout or provide a single dollar toward ongoing expenses. She respected my boundaries and expected accountability from her daughter. A postscript invited me to meet at the cafe across the street. I texted back, yes. 4:30 p.m., corner table. At the cafe, we ordered plain coffee, no sugar, no froth. Two mothers at one small table united by decisions instead of excuses. Thank you for how calmly you've handled all this, she said. I thanked her for the card. We agreed fewer speeches, more steps. Lorena set her cup down and drew a clear line. No bailout, no advance, no cosign, she said. I gave her cushions for years. This time she meets the floor. Her voice carried the weight of a door closing. I pulled out my phone and showed her screenshots of the now closed house fund, complete with timestamps and misleading language, implying I had abandoned my family. I forwarded the images to Marcia with the subject line, "For the record image narrative." Lorena nodded. Facts first, feelings later. Back in the hotel lobby, I sent the same screenshots to Lyle and Carol with a single line. Please keep for your records. I BCC'd Marcia. No hashtags, no public blast, just a paper trail. Documentation is not revenge. Lorena stepped aside to call her husband. I caught only her side of the conversation, measured, unwavering. When she returned, she said, "We're aligned. No funds from our house." Relief wasn't joy. It was the sound of a door shutting cleanly. Later, we sat in a quiet seating nook. Lorena dialed Carol on speaker. "We won't finance this," she told her daughter, voice steady. "You two must live what you signed." I stayed silent, leaving space for the weight of her words. Back in my room, I scanned the card and saved the image under external support closed. I added a note. Other spigot sealed by writer, not by me. My blue pen underlined the date, not the emotion. Before bed, I texted Lorena. "Your boundary protects all of us," she replied. "Then let it hold." Tonight, the story stopped being mine alone. The locksmith's small metal clicks kept time with my breath. Each new cylinder slid home with a tidy teach, and the door learned a sound it had never known mine. He handed me the work order on a carbonless pad. I signed with my blue pen, slow and centered. Two new keys lay on my palm like small, bright promises. I closed my fingers and felt their weight settle into the soft pocket of my hand, a boundary that turned and turned only for me now. At the kitchen counter, I emptied my purse. 2 thin brass spares labeled from the old house, and a third I'd once called emergency. I slid them into a mailing envelope and wrote across the front, steady block letters, "Retired, do not use." I dated and initialed the seal, then filed it behind the tab that read, "House 35%. Paper trails for doors, the same as for bank accounts. If anyone asked where the keys had gone, the answer would fit in an evidence sleeve." I walked the breezeway of the senior community and let the morning hold me. Rosemary and basil spilled from wooden boxes along the courtyard rail. Mrs. Alvarez waved with the hose in her hand, a little arc of water catching the sun. We exchanged names and the sort of pact older neighbors keep. Without fuss, we mind our own, and we mind our dignity. I noticed the camera eye tucked under the stairwell red diode slow blinking. No audience, only witness. The phone vibrated at my hip from Lyle. "We're coming by to pick up the spare, don't make this hard." I read it twice the way you read a weather alert. A reply formed the way a spine does quietly. "We meet on the porch, daylight. No spare exists anymore." I put the phone face down and brewed tea. I ate a sandwich at the little table by the window and felt the keys on the placemat like punctuation. Late afternoon drew a bright line across my porch steps. I stood 2 risers up door behind me, locked. Across the courtyard, Mrs. Alvarez watered the mint eyes, flicking up now and then. The breeze smelled faintly of salt and cut wood. My new mat read simply, "Welcome," with a thin underline. Footfalls on concrete. Lyle and Carol turned the corner together. He stopped at the bottom step as if that edge had always been there. "Mom, just give me the spare until next week. We need access if there's an emergency." His voice had the borrowed authority of someone who still believed I kept a drawer with extra versions of myself. "There is no spare," I said. "Requests go by email. Emergencies call 911. Our agreement governs." I kept my hands in plain sight. Carol's laugh was too light for the hour. "This is ridiculous. Doors are for family." The word family landed like a coin expecting change. I didn't move. Silence did the counting. Lyle reached for the knob. The latch met his palm with the dull certainty of a new mechanism. He rattled it once. I lifted the folded work order so he could see the date and model number, and beneath it the clear plastic sleeve with Unfounded stamped in bold at the top. "If you doubt my mind," I said level as a ruler, "trust the invoice." The sentence didn't raise the temperature. It lowered the room to paper. Across the way, Mrs. Alvarez stopped the hose. Water pattered against the soil and went quiet. She didn't call out, didn't point, didn't need to. Her presence redrew the lines around us. Carol saw her and adjusted her voice the way people do when witnesses appear less sharp, more shaped. "We're just trying to make this easier," she said. I could have said I'd tried easy for years. Instead, I lifted the work order half an inch and let the camera's diode blink. "Listen," Lyle said, "we'll send the bank packet. Friday, you'll see the numbers, but for now, we need a key." He was bargaining with yesterday. "No," I said, and let the word be a flat stone. "You signed for 2 years of proof. Doors open to paper, not pressure." I wasn't angry. Anger would have needed fuel. I had receipts. He let his hand fall from the knob. For a second, his face was the face of a little boy who couldn't get the jar open. It tugged something in me, but I left it alone. Love can be a muscle you train to lift what is yours and set down what is not. Behind him, Carol's shoulders rolled back eyes, quick calculating audience and angle. None of that mattered to the lock. I stepped back 1 pace and pressed the latch from inside. The strike plate kissed the bolt with a clean click. No slam. The door made the sound of a conclusion. Through the wood, the courtyard returned hose mower, a neighbor's radio, 2 patios over. My phone buzzed, a calendar reminder from Marcia Compliance, packet due Friday. The ordinary dignity of a deadline. When I opened the door again a few inches, they were already walking away. Mrs. Alvarez bent to pinch a leaf, the water arced again. I nodded to her. She nodded back. I locked the door once more and set the keys on the table beside my mug. The steam had thinned to a soft ribbon. Evening pooled in the courtyard. I sat at the picnic table under the pergola wood slats, casting stripes across my forearms. The new keys lay where the sun could find them, a small gleam on the grain. Rosemary lifted in the breeze and brushed my sleeve. I thought about thresholds, the ones you cross, the ones you hold, the ones you retire, with an envelope and a signature you owe only yourself. I texted a single sentence to Marcia Porch. Conversation concluded. Boundaries upheld, witness present. No flourish, no summary of expressions. She responded with a checkmark. Plain can be a blessing. The courtyard lights came on in a slow chain. In the half-light, the keys looked heavier than they were. Not because of metal, but because they finally belonged. I gathered my dishes, rose, and went inside. The lock turned under my hand, and the sound it made felt like a name said right the first time. At 8:37 a.m., the packet landed with a hollow thud in my inbox subject line. Tidy attachments, neatly named the way people dress up late arrivals to look responsible. I forwarded it to Marcia with a 2-word note, then set the phone face down and opened the first file. Bank statements. My legal pad weighted first page, clean blue pen, uncapped. I read each line like a heartbeat, deposit, debit, transfer, charge. The rhythm tells you when a body is well and when it isn't. Some totals behaved, others did not. Restaurants stood right where discipline should have been. Little boutiques with names that pretended to be errands. A credit card minimum wore the word paid, but the bank ledger refused to show the money leaving. I circled dates, underlined amounts, and wrote a single sentence on the margin. Numbers tell tone. I did not underline tone. I have learned not to give emotions the flair they ask for. Then the first red flag raised itself. A cash withdrawal the very day the QR campaign died. Household, the memo said, as if a euphemism could carry ethical weight. I opened my email and sent Marcia 3 bullets, dates, amounts, contradictions. Her reply came back in one beat. Meet 2. PM, cure options only. I finished my coffee cold and called the bank. A rep on speaker confirmed what the paper already whispered. No posting for the card, marked, paid. The mortgage draft bounced, then rescheduled for next week like a student asking for time. The rep promised a PDF. I asked for email, not assurances. I printed a 1-page variance sheet and held it a moment to cool from the machine. 3 entries, clean columns, no adjectives. At 2:05, I took a corner table in a quiet cafe where the ice machine clicked every few minutes like a metronome. Lyle and Kirill sat across from me. Marcia joined by phone, her voice as level as the line between 2 sums. I slid the variance sheet across. These don't reconcile, I said. No scolding, no sermon, just the page. They tried for an exception. Transition week, Carol said, palms open. We need a little grace. Lyle added, eyes down. I set my pen on the sheet and kept my voice even. Grace is not a budget category. We wrote the categories together. On the phone, Marcia cut the path clean. 14 days to cure, make the bounce draft whole, eliminate discretionary overages, and present a signed job offer for Kirill. Cure is not apology. Cure is work. While Marcia spoke, Lyle's phone lit with a realtor's draft. He turned the screen toward himself, but I saw enough 3BR plus studio, former guest room. The staged photo showed a tidy room without the little guest plaque that had hung there for years. A word had been peeled off a door the same way my name had been peeled off a chart. I didn't mention it. Symbols don't require narration. They stand in the middle of a room and do their own talking. I set 2 documents on the table, notice of breach variance and intent to list if uncured. Paper has no volume. It still fills a space. This isn't a threat, I said. It's the clock we chose. Marcia's email ping sounded in stereo from our phones, timestamp laid beside our coffee cups like a chaperone. The cafe's air felt cooler, though no one touched the thermostat. We went line by line through the cure, settle the missed draft with proof of posting, bring dining and boutique lines within cap, show a job acceptance letter dated inside the window. If cured, the agreement continues. If not, we trigger listing at market and my percentage becomes cash, unarguable, unromantic. Lyle nodded the way a person nods at a diagnosis they suspected. Kirill looked at the floor, then at the glass door, then at the variance sheet again, as if a second look could rearrange the numbers. I initialed the notice. They initialed acknowledgement. No one grabbed for the papers. No one tried to pocket a page. We all watched our hands like they were operating on something living. Outside, a kid walked past holding a baseball glove. He smacked the pocket with a ball to soften the leather. Practice for a clean catch later. Preparation has a sound. On my way home, I drove by the old house and didn't stop. A yard sign leaned against the porch like it was waiting for permission. They could keep their plaque changes and room names. Rooms do not award lineage. A ledger can't love you, but it won't lie to you either. Back at my desk, the PDF from the bank sat in my inbox, bright and unembarrassed. I filed it behind the variance sheet in a folder labeled Monthly 01, the first of many I hoped would become dull with predictability. Evening brought quiet. I made tea and reread the agreement like a hymn with new meaning. Cure isn't kindness, it's care. Care for a mortgage that must draft on the day the mortgage drafts, for an account that must show what it claims, for a promise that must meet a date. I texted Marcia Field. We're at day 1 of 14. Her reply came back with a single word: good. I put the blue pen away and let my hands rest on the desk. Mercy for me is a line in ink. It says yes when a person chooses the work, and it says no when a person chooses the story. The window was open a little. The evening carried in rosemary from the courtyard planter, the same scent from the night I closed my new door for the first time. Across town, a plaque had come down, and a budget had told the truth. I didn't need anyone to say they were sorry. I needed them to add correctly. Day 13 would bring a different envelope, one with a county seal and a clock of its own. When the government's paper arrives, the next move writes itself. Day 13 began with a thud against my door, a manila envelope county seal pressed deep into the corner like a coin. Inside, the stamped acknowledgement named me as the party of record on a memorandum of interest and compliance addendum. I set it on my desk blotter and felt the relief that comes when a room finally has a posted exit map. A seal doesn't argue, it warns. I scanned the document, saved it under title Public Notice, and filed a paper copy in the front of my binder. I noted the instrument number and the clerk's initials, tiny anchors that make future conversations shorter and kinder. Minutes later, Marcia's email arrived, the way good news should, short and unadorned. Subject line: recordation. Confirmed. 2 lines in the body, cloud on title attached. If cure fails, listing can proceed without delay. I read it twice, then underlined the phrase public notice with my blue pen. The pen wasn't celebration. It was a mile marker. Outside, a gull carved the sky over the parking lot, and the day steadied itself. At noon, my calendar chimed Cure Day 13 job offer, required by day 14. I forwarded one last opening to Carol, a dental clinic, looking for a front desk coordinator with benefits and a steady schedule. I added only a single sentence: posting closes at 4 o'clock. No advice, no pitch. Deadlines do their own convincing, and the agreement we all initialed had already given the clock its authority over us. The clinic sat in a low brick building near a grocery store, the kind of place where people bring ordinary pain and leave with ordinary relief. I waited in the lobby with a magazine I didn't open and watched an aquarium throw blue light on the floor. When Carol walked in, surprise flickered, then cooled. "I won't speak for you," I said. "I'm just here until you go in." She nodded once and stepped to the desk to announce her interview. A receptionist handed her a clipboard. She wrote each letter of her name like she meant to keep it. Time stretched and then behaved. I kept my phone face down and counted seconds by the hum of the filter and the laughter of a child trying to whistle. Behind frosted glass voices moved like weather-brief brightness, a gust, a settling. I let my back rest against the chair and practiced breathing that didn't try to steer anyone. Some doors open on paper, some with the soft click of a latch when a manager decides to trust potential. Carol emerged with a clipped, careful smile, the kind you wear when the ground might carry you. "They'll call," she said, not asking for translation. "Then we'll answer with a PDF," I said. In the parking lot, I texted Marcia, "Interview completed. If an offer arrives by day 14, we file proof same day." This wasn't triumph, it was the sound of wheels finding a rail that had been there all along. I sat in my car a moment before starting the engine and looked at the neat rows of storefronts. Lives happen in strip malls and waiting rooms, not in speeches. The agreement would not ask how we felt, only what we could prove and when. At 6:12, the voicemail came, HR from the clinic, voice warm but procedural. "Conditional offer pending background. Check 2-week start, 90-day review with a track toward office manager if benchmarks held." I wrote back on Carol's thread, "Please request a written offer letter as a PDF. Paper first, voice last." Within minutes, a reply promised the file before night. I pictured the office where that call was recorded, a corkboard with schedules, a line of pens on chains. Work is a place that expects you at 8 and releases you at 5. It does not ask your history to bless you before you begin. By 8:03, the attachment landed, letterhead-centered pay rate, and hours clear, supervisor and contingencies listed. I verified the sender domain and signature block, then forwarded the email to Marcia with the subject, "Cure employment secured day 13. Her answer returned almost at once, "Received. Cure item 1 satisfied. Continue on the bounce draft and spending cap." I saved the PDF to the months folder and closed my laptop with the quiet click of a finished step. A copy also went to the secure archive Marcia maintains, so no single device or person holds the only proof. I called Lyle on speaker so no one would mistake tone for leverage. "Job proof is logged," I said. "Next steps are settling the missed mortgage draft, cutting discretionary overages, confirming the car sale." He said, "Thank you the way a man thanks weather for breaking." "Don't thank me," I said. "Thank the calendar." On the other end, I heard him inhale like someone learning to carry a different kind of weight. He didn't argue. He didn't promise either. "We'll get it done," he said, and I could hear the difference between a vow and a plan take shape in his voice. Plans have lists and receipts. Night pressed the window while I laid the county seal copy above the offer letter law on top, effort beneath. I dated each page, slid them into sleeves, and wrote a note to myself. "Bones of a future. Check alignment on day 20. The room felt honest. I turned off the lamp and let the quiet sit where apology used to live. Tonight, bones of a future clicked into place. The rest would be chosen by numbers, not noise. Day 14 would bring its own arithmetic. I had already laid out the ledger lines and sharpened the pencil. Morning light spread across my desk like a thin sheet of water. I keyed in the last figures and waited for the calculator to stop blinking. The numbers finally held. The restaurant line was gone. The car proceeds had cleared. The bounce draft sat corrected with a fresh confirmation code. Columns that had once argued now agreed. Math doesn't forgive, it permits. I printed the page, signed the footer with the date, and sent it to Marcia with a short note the variance was cured, and I was ready to review our options without speeches. I put the page on top of the stack and let my hand rest there, feeling the steadiness of paper that didn't need me to defend it. In the conference room, Lyle and Carol arrived with a simple folder instead of a performance. Receipts slid across the wood, the closed card statement the utilities brought current, the auto draft proof. Marcia checked each line against the notice from 2 weeks ago, tapping the dates with her pen, asking only, "Is this the final posting? And do you have the bank PDF?" We answered one item at a time. I kept my blue pen uncapped, but still. There was nothing left to underline except the fact that every entry existed. The room felt larger with fewer excuses in it. Marcia's phone lit with a new voicemail and she lifted a finger before we could continue. She put it on speaker. A clear voice from the clinic thanked Kirill for a strong first week, confirmed the official start date, and mentioned the 90-day review had been moved earlier based on initiative and reliability. The message ended with a callback number. External validation replaced pleading. I watched Carol's shoulders drop as if she had been holding her breath for years. Lyle looked at her like a person, not a plan. I let the silence be generous. I reached into my folder and slid out a single page already initialed by me. It locked the buyout at a reduced $75,000 if and only if their compliance held steady across 24 months. If they missed the cadence, the terms returned to full value, or the house went to market without delay. No drama, just rails. This is as far as my mercy goes, I said. It has a date, a number, and a door. Lyle read every line. Carol did too. When they looked up, I didn't smile. I waited to hear their answer in the language we had all learned to speak yes by signature. Marcia capped her pen and set it between us. The listing agreement will remain prepared, but unsigned, she said. It stays in escrow, not on the lawn. The for sale sign that had lived in the edge of my imagination folded itself into the closet of possibility, documented and dormant. There is a kind of peace that comes from knowing you could press a button and choosing not to. I felt it settle, not as a favor, but as a tool in the drawer where it belonged. We moved on. The calendar would keep time for us. We chose a diner at noon because diners don't care about anyone's story. The waitress poured coffee and never asked what brought us in. I paid my check, they paid theirs. We didn't rewrite the past. We compared schedules, pay dates, packet deadlines, a reminder to send the car title transfer confirmation by Friday. Lyle said he could swing a Saturday shift if the clinic needed coverage on Mondays. Carol nodded already, thinking in blocks and hours. We ate separately, and for the first time we left together. At the curb, Lyle said, "We'll make this work." I answered, "Make it honest." Kirill's voice was quieter than I expected. "Thank you for not humiliating us," she said. I met her eyes without softness or sharpness. Accountability isn't humiliation, it's adulthood. She nodded, and I saw young in her that wasn't childish, just unpracticed. It takes practice to live inside boundaries without feeling punished. The sun over the parking lot was indifferent and kind in equal measure. Back at Marcia's office, we signed the amendment. The escrow instructions referenced the cure log by date and title. Copies slid into envelopes. PDFs flew to inboxes. My clear sleeve gained a new first page labeled Amendment Held, and the old Unfounded sheet took second place. The story of the last weeks could be read in the order of those pages from defense to design. We shook hands without promises about holidays or birthdays. The future would be made of packets, not performances. Dusk found me in the senior community garden, where the rosemary always smells like clean memory. Mrs. Alvarez clipped a handful of basil and pressed it into my palm. Sprinklers clicked a gentle rhythm, a kinder metronome than the locksmith's ratchet had been. I texted Lorena a photo of the signed amendment boundaries held. She replied, "Let them keep holding." Gratitude moved through me without gathering a debt behind it. Some reliefs are light because they belong to everyone. When the apartment finally went quiet, I set the last document in its place and turned off the lamp. I wasn't the bank anymore. I was the mother again of a grown son, not a dependent one. No one had apologized in the shape I'd imagined, and yet the truth had settled into all the right ledgers. I put the blue pen in the drawer and closed it gently. Some gifts you stop giving so everyone can start living. I stood at the window and watched the courtyard lights come on, each one steady, none of them asking anything from me. I'm a mother who finally learned this love without boundaries turns parents into lenders and children into debtors. Paper didn't replace compassion, it protected it. If you're facing a similar storm, keep records, keep your voice low, and let your calendar carry the consequence. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family? What did respect look like for you? If this reached you, please subscribe to the channel for more quiet power stories. Drop a 1 or share where you're watching from. If it didn't land, tell me why and where you found this video.